Hello and welcome. I'm John McAleavey, founder and host of the Quadcast podcast and a 33-year spinal cord injury survivor. I'm proud to be working in conjunction with my friends at the North American Spinal Cord Injury Consortium on a series of informational podcasts. NASCIC has the mission to bring about unified achievements in research, care, cure, and policy by supporting collaborative efforts across the spinal cord injury community. With over 700 members supporting that mission, 70% are individuals living with SCI, along with their families and caregivers. The aim of this podcast series is to introduce people, organizations, and devices that are working on bettering the lives of individuals living with SCI. In this episode, Matt Rose, a healthcare executive, clinical advocate, and Army veteran, will introduce us to H-Wave, a non-invasive medical device intended to speed recovery, restore function, and manage chronic, acute, or post-operative pain. Matt Rose, a U.S. Army veteran, former combat medic, and healthcare leader whose career has been shaped by working directly with people recovering from serious injury. Matt began his path in healthcare as a combat medic in the Army, caring for wounded service members and learning early what resilience, adaptability, and teamwork truly mean. After his military service, he continued working in research, clinical, and rehabilitation settings, supporting patients as they navigated life-changing injuries, including spinal cord injury and paralysis. That patient-first foundation has stayed with him throughout his career. Matt has also been closely involved with adaptive sports, including clinical support for the Warrior Games and partnerships supporting national wheelchair basketball teams. Experiences that reinforce the power of movement, competition, and community in restoring confidence and independence. Today, he works alongside clinicians, organizations, and advocacy groups focused on improving quality of life and expanding what's possible for people living with physical limitations. This conversation is about real experiences, real progress, and what living fully can look like after injury. And Matt brings a perspective shaped by service, care, and deep respect for the journey each person is on. And with that, it is my pleasure to welcome in the aforementioned Matt Rose. Matt, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me on, John.
So why don't we say we jump right into it? Before moving into leadership roles, you work directly with patients in clinical and rehabilitation settings. What lessons from that time still guide how you approach healthcare decisions now?
I think that if you go back to our core values, so at H-Wave, our most important core value is patient outcomes above all else. And so when we enter into a rehabilitation setting and we're working with individual patients, it's really about the goals that the patient has for themselves, right? So focusing in on that, being able to provide pain relief is really important for people who are limited by pain. And then certainly helping people to be more active, independently active, is really important because that gives more of a sense of purpose in life, right? Being able to do things for yourself. And so we really focus on those areas wherever we're at, whoever we're working with.
That's excellent because, as someone myself, I'm a spinal cord injury survivor. I know that I don't necessarily have pain all that much, but a lot of my, fellow SCIers do. And I can see how it takes a toll on just their everyday life. And so the fact that H-Wave is working to help help them with that is such a welcome thing nowadays. And so how about when you work with patients facing life-changing injuries? What did you learn about what matters most to them beyond traditional clinical outcomes?
I think a lot of that just starts with conversation, really trying to talk with people about what's most important to them.
Hmm.
Usually when you're dealing with a pretty significant injury, it's not just one thing that's holding you back. It's a handful of things. And so really focusing on like, hey, what are your goals? What's the most important thing that we've got to address first?
Sure.
To your point, for somebody who's got a lot of pain and that's the limiting factor, then we're going to do everything we can to really focus in that area.
Hmm.
Um, or if it's for someone who says, hey, I just can't use my left shoulder like I used to, we're going to really focus on trying to improve function. So it's really just about connecting with people and understanding what they need most.
Sure. So it's interesting. You can zero in on certain areas of the body and certain body parts where, as you mentioned, if someone has like a left shoulder or something that's bothering them, or it's something that you can sort of penetrate in those areas.
Absolutely. And it's important because, we do a lot of work with patients that are veterans, so being treated in the VA. We've done a lot of work with their SCI and polytrauma departments, and these guys and ladies who have gone and seen the effects of war and experiencing that. When you get dropped out of a helicopter from 60 feet and hit the water, there are some significant effects on the body, right?
Yes.
You drive over an IED, there are some significant effects on the body. So it's not just one system or one body part that's affected. And that's why it's so important to really hone in on the thing that needs attention most first.
Absolutely. And to help those that are helping us. I know that you are yourself a veteran, and so we'll get into that a little bit later on.
Yeah.
Something that I mentioned off the top is that I am a spinal cord injury survivor. You also experienced a spinal cord injury. Would you mind sharing more about your story if you could?
Sure. And I think that I would count myself as one of the lucky spinal cord injury patients where, I only had to experience the effects of spinal cord injury for about a month.
Hmm.
But I was involved in a high speed head on collision and was what they called frankly myelopathic in all four extremities. So mostly loss of function in my arms and legs. But I could still walk and still kind of use my legs. It just wasn't that easy. And then
Hmm.
was taken into emergency surgery. And thankfully, I had full resolution of all of those symptoms and challenges.
So you're telling us you dodged a bullet.
100% dodged a bullet.
Oh my goodness. And it was the result of a car accident, was it not, Matt?
It was, yeah.
Oh my goodness. Boy, I tell you. I see. I work at Kessler Institute for Rehabilitation up here in West Orange, New Jersey, and I see automobile accident, people all the time, and you just think that there, by the grace of God, if you're, it could go one way or it could go the other way, and it's. I'm happy for you that that yours has resolved itself, and so God bless on that.
Yeah.
How about many people listening are navigating paralysis or spinal cord injury? From your experience, what are some of the most overlooked challenges patients face during their long-term recoveries?
When you look at the long term, um, one of the tenets of how the body works is it's built to move. And when you've got limitations in motion, there are certain systems in the body that just don't work the way they should.
Mm,
And that ranges from just standard blood flow, right? But another important system is the lymphatic system. And the
mm,
lymphatic system in the body is responsible for the removal of all of the congestion and waste in tissues. So components of inflammation, or, if you were to exercise muscles and build up additional fluid in those muscles as a result of working out or movement, the lymphatic system relies on the body to move. It's a passive system. And most of that reliance is on muscle movement.
right.
As you think about long term health and you think about how can I make this the best experience possible, we've got to find a way to get those systems working. And so when I talk with patients who are suffering from the effects of a spinal cord injury, whether it's paralysis or pain, the first focal point we have is how do we get your body moving the best we possibly can and
Hmm.
keep systems active and healthy, so that we can really, in the long term, make sure that you have the best possible experience without all of the challenges of tissue congestion or pain or the long term effects of not resolving those issues.
Absolutely. The old term, move it or lose it, right, Matt?
That's right. Motion is lotion.
Yeah. Oh, I like that one. I've never heard that one before.
Yeah.
I'm gonna use that, but I will footnote you, I
Yeah.
promise.
The other thing
You
that
know Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to mention, the other thing that we really focus on is, especially in the long term, is medication usage, right? So that's a huge focal point for us at H-Wave.
Mhm.
Got a ton of research that shows that H-Wave on the pain control setting can actually really facilitate decreases in the use of pain medication. And so when you
Okay.
talk about long-term effects, right? Um, the last thing you want is to have to rely on a pain medication for a long period of time.
Mhm.
We all know the effects of that. And
Sure.
another conversation that we'll have, motion is lotion. We got to get you moving in the best way possible, get those systems activated.
Mhm.
Gosh, if you're having to rely on a narcotic or an opioid, especially for pain control, um, man, we've got to do something about that. And that's
Yes.
where I think H-Wave can make a significant impact.
Yes. Matt, I know that speaking for myself and a lot of my friends, when COVID rolled around and everyone was sort of locked up in their house and nobody could get out to do therapy, folks like me and the community, it's not as if we can just hop into a Planet Fitness or a Jack LaLanne, if you want to go back 100 years. I'm
Right.
dating myself. We couldn't go anywhere. And I know what, for one, my doctors told me I got severely deconditioned. So what happened was a lot of the muscle mass that I had, and it wasn't a lot, but it worked for me, was gone. And now I'm really paying the price. And another thing that I'm experiencing, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners are too, is that aging with a spinal cord injury and with pain is a very real thing, and it's bumping into me pretty heavy right now. So the motion is lotion, and the movement is something that I know that I really have to pay more attention to, and I know that folks in our community do as well.
Yeah. Uh, I just I just passed a 50th birthday, so I'm absolutely feeling the effects of aging and slower recovery, um, soreness more often than I'd like.
Right?
And yeah, it definitely adds another contributing factor when you're talking
Right.
just being
Yeah.
be independent and move without a lot of uncomfortable sensations.
Absolutely, absolutely. How about in your work with adaptive sports, including the Warrior Games and wheelchair basketball? What have you observed about the role movement, competition, and community play in recovery?
Yeah, the Warrior Games and the national wheelchair basketball experiences that we've had, and we've worked with a number of college teams as well. It's been really exciting because you've got usually younger people who are, especially on the wheelchair basketball teams, who are really competitive,
Yeah.
and they're trying to win a gold medal at the Olympics, right? So they've got to be at the top of their game. And
Yes.
so we know all of those athletes are in, self-propelled chairs, and the thing that they run into most is issues with their hands and their shoulders.
Right.
But then they're also dealing with pressure wounds, right? And so, an athlete being able to play in the game, stay in the game, and stay with their training regimen is so critical to be competitive. And so they've seen a lot of really great use of H wave, and a lot of that just is on the tissue recovery setting. So
Mhm.
the blood flow and activating lymphatic system, and that's what kind of keeps them active or helps to resolve those really difficult pressure wounds.
Sure. And how great is it to see that in spite of these injuries that they've had, they still have that want to and athletic prowess that they want to go out and win at all costs. I know it's something that we as a community, when we lose the ability to play, even if it's getting older in a men's league, a softball league, or whatever, you want to be out there, and all of a sudden you can't do that. It's good to see that they're putting their mind towards something that's teamwork oriented and goal oriented. So I'm sure that was something that's impressive for you.
Absolutely. Yeah, the mindset of the athletes is pretty amazing. I mean, they will do almost anything and do some pretty amazing stuff to win these games. And they're really good. I
Yeah.
even being able-bodied out on a court, they'd probably beat me every time. So
Yeah. It's that mindset also, as we mentioned, as we get older, that the line that our bodies can't cash the checks that our mind is writing anymore. You know, they're still out there doing it, which is admirable, and it's amazing, and it's you need that. You really do need that because when we have injuries like that, that window of competition sort of closes on us, and to be able to fill it again with playing a sport and being active and being a part of a team is so important. Along with keeping, as you mentioned, the body moving and the lymphatic system cooking. So that's it's win-win all around. I know.
Yeah.
How about Matt, for our listeners who may not be familiar? Can you explain in simple terms what H wave is and how it works on the body?
Absolutely. Yeah, we've kind of hinted to a few things, but H-wave is a medical device. It's super easy to use, and what it does is it generates energy that is transmitted through the skin using sticky electrodes. And so, as you picture that in your mind, usually the first thing that people envision is like a TENS unit or something like that.
Right.
But H-wave is absolutely not a TENS unit. So as I explain what H-wave does, it's also important to know that the differences in output of these devices is really important. Just like if you were going searching for a light bulb, right? If you go to Home Depot, you see all of these different kinds of light bulbs. They output different frequencies of light, so it gives off a different color, or it might be a different power of light. Uh,
Hmm.
Different from like a 10 gigawatt laser that can cut through 5 feet of steel, also light, right? So in the world of electrical stimulation, there's a lot of different options. And H wave really is probably the most powerful and most effective device on the market. And it's usually only available by prescription. We also make an over the counter device. Um, but H wave has two different settings on it, and they're really unique.
Hmm.
First, when we talk about pain control, it uses a higher frequency, but it actually creates such powerful pain control that you get from a single treatment somewhere between 6 and 8 hours of relief, and that
Wow.
correlates in clinical trial to the ability to decrease or eliminate the use of oral pain medications. Right, so if you have to get really good results in order to agree to stop taking your pain medication, but that's what we
You
find
sure do.
a lot with patients in clinical trial and in observational trials that
Hmm.
do that. In fact, 65% of the time they're able to decrease or eliminate pain medication. Um, the other setting though is really kind of where we feel like if you were to say the magic of H wave is, because there are quite a few things to address pain on the market,
Right.
uh, but the lower frequency setting is what makes it really quite amazing. And again, because the body's built to move, um, and we've got all these systems that are dependent on movement. H-wave actually creates a muscle contraction that is non-fatiguing, so you can leave it on for hours and hours, and you won't ever be sore or tired. And the real role of that muscle movement is not to strengthen your muscles; it's actually to use your muscles as pumps. And so you get dramatic improvement in blood flow. You get dramatic improvement in the delivery of whole blood and whole blood components to the tissues. And then you also get an activation of your lymphatic system. Again, that system removes all of the wastes. And it's the only system in the body that does that, that removes wastes from the tissues. So if you're dealing with chronic, edema, or you're dealing with chronic joint congestion, H wave can activate the only system that can alleviate those issues. So if you use that repeatedly, we've actually looked at this in clinical trial. The body responds to H wave as if you're being active, and the body will actually respond to increases in demand in the blood flow system by creating more blood vessels. So it's called deep tissue sprouting angiogenesis. So you can actually get better blood flow to tissues after using H wave, which is pretty remarkable.
Wow. I was going to ask you to spell that, but that might take a little too long.
Yeah.
Matt, how often is it prescribed? Is this through a physiatrist or PT, OT? Is it used in that respect?
Yeah, so a lot of physical therapists and occupational therapists will use H wave, and we get a lot of that, especially in the VA.
Hmm.
Um, but usually, physical therapists and occupational therapists are precluded from prescribing devices like this, so therapeutic devices. Um,
Okay.
be prescribed by a physician.
Hmm.
So we see a lot of prescriptions coming from physical medicine and rehabilitation. We see
Yes.
a lot of prescriptions coming from orthopedics, but we see a lot of prescriptions kind of coming from the pain world in general. Uh,
Right.
if you're seeing a pain doctor or an orthopedist of any number of subspecialties, that's where we see most of our referral activity from.
And how often would one be using this or having sessions with it? And if you could, what would be the average like duration of usage with one?
Yeah, so those are really good questions, John. It kind of depends on what you're dealing with. So most patients in the beginning will start off using H wave for half an hour to 45 minutes at a minimum twice a day. And
Okay.
again, that's because we've got to create some changes in the way that the body is operating, especially on that lower frequency setting where we're getting tissue fluids moving. Um, on the pain control setting, you'd certainly want to use it at least twice a day so that we can really shut down those nerves that are sending pain signals and keep them shut down for long periods of time.
Mhm.
What a lot of patients experience, though, is that after using it for a month or 3 months, they find that they are getting such good, long lasting relief because those benefits are accumulative and the body
Right.
changes as a result of treatment, that they get long enough lasting relief. They might use it once a day, or you might use it 3 times a week. So it really kind of depends on individuals and what your challenges are. And if you re injure yourself, you might need to go back to that twice a day or even use it
Sure.
3 times a day if you need to. So the cool thing about having it is it's just kind of on demand, right? You can,
Yes.
whenever you need it.
I love that. What initially drew you to H-Wave, and how did it align with your clinical background and patient-first values?
Yeah, it's an interesting story I have to share.
Sure.
Um, I'd worked in medical research. I was actually working in bacteriology and microbiology for the government, both in the Army at the National Institutes of Health as well. And got out of the service and started doing some work for my family. And my stepdad really suffered from lymphatic throat cancer. And he'd never done any of the things that normally would lead to lymphatic throat cancer. But he had to have a very radical surgery where they basically uh, made an incision from the bottom of his ear all the way around his jaw and then down
Oh,
his chest. And then they pulled that off and they removed all the cancer and then tried to put it all back in place.
wow.
And so it was a really major radical surgery. And
Mm,
afterwards, he was just really left with a lot of pain and a lot of swelling and a lot of symptoms that just he couldn't find an answer for.
yeah.
And we actually went down to visit a family friend who was doing some consulting work for H Wave at the time. And he said, "Hey, Ed, you should use this thing that I'm doing this consulting for this company, and it really works." And so when I looked at H Wave for the first time 25 years ago, um, and I had done all of this research in the army and the government, and been involved in kind of the medical sciences, and I looked at this thing and I was like, "There is no way this thing's going to work."
Right.
Uh,
The healthy skeptic.
the healthy skeptic, and but he used it for about 45 minutes. And we all kind of went to bed. And the next morning, he woke up and he was completely symptom free, completely.
Bam.
And so I actually ended up calling the company and asking a bunch of questions. And, it was through that, just wanting to know more about it, being curious about how it worked, that started my career at H Wave almost 20.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah,
What a story. And did he continue using the device?
he did. Yeah. Used it
Oh,
for
wow.
years. Yeah.
God, that's unbelievable. What a story. How about H-Wave is different from many electrical stimulation devices that people may have tried? What makes it distinct? How it works and interacts with nerves, muscles, and circulation.
Yeah, and I kind of talked about that a little bit earlier, but I think that the thing that really makes H Wave different is that it actually works, and it's rare to find. The team that works for H Wave that interacts with physicians and patients. The thing that we really like to say is like there are very few things in medicine these days that create a wow outcome.
Right.
And that's what makes H-Wave different is you could use this for half an hour to 45 minutes, have the worst pain you've ever experienced, have the most limitation in a joint or an extremity, and after 45 minutes and end the treatment and go, wow, that really works.
Where have you been all my life?
Right. We actually get the question a lot.
Wow.
Yeah. So I think that that's, at the end of the day, we could talk about the differences in technology. We could talk about how long things have been on the market. We could talk about the research. But the most important thing is the experience you get after treatment is like, wow, that actually worked.
Mm.
And
Uh,
that's the difference.
I was going to say, and how fulfilling is that to you and to your team and the folks at H Wave that what you're putting out there is really working?
I'd say it's probably one of the most important things that keeps people working at H-Wave. I've been here for, again, almost 25 years. A number of the people that have worked on my team, have been here for at least a decade, some
Hmm.
push 2 decades like me. Uh,
Right.
a lot of longevity because it offers that fulfillment piece. We
Hmm.
actually get to play a role in changing somebody's life for the better. And I got to tell you, there's almost nothing better than to have that experience on a daily basis,
Hmm.
where you're making a difference. And that's
Hmm.
again, one of the reasons why one of our core values and our most important core value is patient outcomes above all else.
Mm.
It keeps us focused on making a difference for people and puts the energy behind really making a difference. And then we get the benefit of that fulfillment with the patient.
It's great. It makes it seem that, when you're waking up and you get to go to work every day, you're making a difference in people's lives, and
Yeah.
that's fulfilling. It absolutely is. Have you seen H-Wave used to support people? How have you seen it used to support people living with spinal cord injuries, particularly around circulation, muscle health, and secondary complications?
Yeah, we've done quite a bit of work, especially again in the VA, and then certainly out in the community, working with patients with spinal cord injury. And I think that the thing that we really focus on again most is function, right? Movement, independent activity.
Yeah.
But man, there are so many challenges, and so when you're dealing with pain, we want to address that. But some of the challenges are like pressure wounds. Those can be really, really challenging for people in chairs.
Hmm.
And so, being able to provide a treatment that hastens that process, removing waste and improving blood flow, which kind of is the basis of all tissue healing. If we can help to accelerate that, then we can help people get back to their normal lives faster.
Hmm.
Uh, and again, just really being focused on patient outcomes and then getting the fulfillment of seeing people get better faster than they expected. And it's interesting when you talk with a lot of the clinicians and physicians around people getting better faster. When you've got a pressure wound, they'll oftentimes tell you, well, this is going to be like a 3 to 6 month or longer process to resolve this thing. And when you've got patients coming back into wound care, healing in half the time that was expected, that's when you kind of get one of those wow experiences. It's not immediate, but man, it's a lot faster than what it was going to be.
It sure is. Again, as I mentioned, I work at Kessler, and so I'm on the wing, and I see folks with skin conditions, and it was something that never entered my mind when I had my spinal cord injury. And early on, at nighttime when I was in bed, I would have to have every 4 hours people would come in and they would roll me from one side to the other. And oftentimes they weren't, very gentle. It was just like somebody would manhandle me and, hey, I'm in a sound sleep and I'm sliding from one side to the other. I didn't know what it was all about, but it's a real thing, and these wounds can be deep and some of them can go right down to the bone and, can get septic and, you could wind up dying from something like that. So the fact that this device can help individuals with that and cutting down the time, I know, that's a good thing to get people back moving again and getting them back in therapy because when you do have a wound like that, oftentimes you're not you're precluded from getting back into doing things like that. Isn't that true?
Yeah, and it's almost like a double-edged sword, right? Because movement causes healing, right? The body depends on the movement of muscle and improving blood flow and activating lymphatic system. But again, to your point, when you've got a pressure wound or one of those wounds that just, especially if you've got it, you're normally in a chair and you've got it at the bottom of your spine or you've got it on your legs. Gosh, well, then you can't sit in your chair. You can't be moving around. You're probably limited to being in bed.
Yeah.
And that just slows everything down from a healing process.
Right.
So you
Not
kind
to
of think
mention
it's a double whammy.
Yeah, not to mention what it does to you mentally. I mean, oh
Right.
my goodness. Because at the end of the day, these injuries take so much from us physically, but it's the mental aspect of it all that is just, people can wind up going down the rabbit hole, and it's not a friendly place down there because it can really take your whole realm in a different direction. And so the fact that they are able to see some results with this and shorten the effects of sores and whatnot is another feather in H wave's cap. Absolutely. For individuals with limited or no voluntary movement, why is maintaining circulation and tissue health so important? And how can that affect quality of life over time? I think we've been kind of hitting on that, but you could expound on it a little bit more if you could.
Yeah, with patients that we've worked with who have pretty significant limitations, and I wish that we could develop a way where you could just kind of sit next to H wave and heal through osmosis, but we haven't figured that out yet. So
Mhm.
some mechanical things you have to do, like placing electrodes on the skin and turning the device on. But we've gotten really good at working with caregivers, right? So most people will have someone in their lives, whether that's someone in a professional position or a family member who really helps with providing treatment and setting up H wave. But for those people, especially, just keeping the tissues healthy is really important, and preventing issues like pressure wounds or really significant additional injuries, or dealing with a complex problem just as a result of not moving very much.
Right.
But those things can have a pretty significant impact. And I liked what you said earlier about just the psychology of having to deal with complications or new issues. And that's one of the things that we survey almost every single patient that receives a device at 30 days. And then we stay in touch with them pretty much forever, as long as they tell us that we can keep calling them and checking in with them. And, it's interesting. A lot of the comments that we get from patients, because we just have an area where you can say, hey, just any comment that you'd like to tell us about how H wave is helping you. Some people will talk about, like, oh, I'm able to do this better physically, or my pain is down, or I decreased my medication. But some of the most moving comments are really about, I was able to interact with my family again, or I was able to, have my grandkids sit on my lap. So it's those ones, as we're reading them, there's a lot of tear jerkers in there when you're reading these. You're just like,
Yeah.
holy cow.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But
How you
that,
can affect people's life, even in the smallest way. Before we recorded, I was telling you I was trying to push the buttons here, and I have one finger that works out of 10. And I've used some devices in the past, and the fact that, hey, my pinky's wiggling. My pinky hasn't worked in 15 years. It's been on strike. And so just something that small that maybe I could open the jar of orange juice in the morning might be a little bit easier. So for you to hear stories like that, that your device is helping people, I mean, it's a win-win situation all around, you know?
right. And the cool
Yeah.
thing is like, there's not much magical about H wave, where, I mean, it's a fantastic technology. A lot of it is just the interaction with us and the instruction, the personal instruction we give to everyone, that's
Yeah.
individualized to that person. Um, but at the end of the day, what really matters is that you get the small wins in life. You get the experiences of life. Like, those are the things that really make H wave special.
Yeah, absolutely. If you could, Matt, take us through what an initial session with H-Wave would be. What would it entail for, is it done in the clinic? Would it be done at home? You mentioned that you work with caregivers. Take us through what like an initial thing would be from when you're taking it out of the box to when you're turning the switch on.
Sure. I would say there weren't a lot of good things that happened out of the pandemic, but one of them was we got really, really good at setting up virtual instruction by video.
Mm,
So almost an interaction like this. We've got
sure.
a really great team of people who can instruct patients no matter where they're at, no matter if they can get to a clinic or not. If you've got a smartphone or a computer, we can guide you and your caregiver, if that's who you're relying on for assistance. We can guide you through the whole process. But normally, what we like to do is we like to meet with people in person, right?
Yeah.
So there's certainly some value in being able to sit down with someone face to face and really ask the right questions and see for yourself physically what's going on and be able to really customize the pad placements to
Right.
get the best outcome.
Yeah.
Uh, but the interesting thing is, the outcomes we get in person and the outcomes we get with virtual instruction are almost neck and neck, right? So both are really good. But the important thing to remember, whether you're getting an H-Wave prescription device or whether you're getting the over-the-counter device, H-Wave OTC, you know,
Hmm.
those come with full personalized instruction. It's going to be somewhere between 45 minutes and an hour and a half of
Okay.
we spend with you, really listening to the things you're dealing with, and then giving you a custom treatment protocol and probably
Hmm.
several different options to try to get best outcomes. And then we follow up with you after that point. But that 45 to 90 minutes is really explaining, like, here's how this really works
Right.
in layman's terms. Here's how this really works. Here's why you want to use it. Here's how you want to use it. We're going to take you through a full treatment so that you can experience it for yourself the right way.
Hmm.
And then we're going to document how you did before and after so you can see for yourself just in that single treatment what kind of results you got.
Yeah. How
And
about for our listeners, where
yeah,
can they find information about H-Wave? You're all over social media. If you could tell us where we could send our folks, because I know that our listeners now, their interest is obviously piqued, and so they're going to want to find out more about you.
sure. So there's a couple of ways. You can go to hwave.com. So it's h-wave, wave.com.
Hmm.
Lots of really great information there. You can also, if you want to buy a device, the over the counter devices are actually available just for purchase on our website. And for the listeners on this podcast, we've actually got a special code to give you a discount. And so I'm gonna pull this up to make sure I get it correct. Uh,
Please do.
yeah, so
See,
those
we come bearing gifts today. This is
that's right.
great.
We're coming bearing
It's
gifts.
like Oprah, you get a car and you get a car and you get a car.
So the code is NASIC. So NASCIC 30. So there's a coupon code that you enter in when you want to go and buy an OTC device, and you don't need a prescription for the OTC device.
Okay.
Um, and what that will do is it gives you 30% off, and it also gives you a case of those sticky electrodes. And so it
Perfect.
gives you it's a really great value and gives you lots of supplies. So
Yes.
you can use it for quite a while before you need to get more.
Hmm.
So that's one way to do it is you can just go onto the website and purchase it using that code. And then we'll set up either virtual or in-person instruction with you that comes with the H-Wave. Um, or you can get a prescription on the prescription device from your physician, and then we can certainly work with you through that channel as well. If you're a veteran, we have a federal supply service contract with the VA, and they cover H-Wave 100%. So if you want to get an H-Wave prescription device through the VA, that's always an option too. And you can reach out to our contact on the website. There's a little button that says contact us, and we'll reach
Okay.
you and help you set you up with a local representative working with the VA.
Wow. So there's a lot of ways for you to get involved and get one of these. What, Matt, would be sort of the price range are we talking about for the cost for the two separate units?
Yeah, so both devices sell for just under $4,000, so it's $39.95 for both those devices. Uh,
Hmm.
and ultimately, there's that 30% discount that brings it down pretty significantly.
It sure does.
And then the extra little set of supplies kind of gives you some more value there. Uh,
Hmm.
But that's a better price than the one that's listed on the website. And certainly we want to give everybody the opportunity to have access to that.
Absolutely. And I know we touched on this a little bit earlier, but maybe if there's any other stories on some feedback that you've heard from patients with paralysis who've incorporated H-wave into their routines, maybe some from some family members that had said, my husband has been using this for so long and now he's able to do X or we're able to do Y, and it's just sort of put more of a smile on his face.
Yeah, we've actually we've worked with a lot of people who've had spinal cord injuries. I think that the best stories are those people who really want to see either sustaining their current level of good activity, or they want to see a pretty dramatic increase in activity. And for a lot of people who are in chairs where they're self-propelling, right? The thing that they deal with most is pain in the shoulders, because now you're using
Shoulders.
shoulders and upper extremities for
Yeah.
locomotion, and really addressing some of those inflammatory responses or the arthritic responses in the hands, the elbows, and the shoulders. And that really kind of keeps them at that level of activity they want to be at. And then for those who might be in a power chair, or those who have other limitations, where they want to see a pretty dramatic rise in their activity, or their ability just to function, right?
Yeah.
Looking at those patients, especially with upper extremity, wanting to create the best possible movement and function that we can. So dealing with a lot of contracture, dealing with a lot of just stiff joints, and creating the ability for people to see a pretty dramatic change in range of motion and ability to function with the upper extremities is really important.
Absolutely. If there's one message, Matt, that you'd want listeners living with spinal cord injury to take away from our conversation today, what would it be?
I would say there you got nothing to lose. If you've got an opportunity to try H wave, our promise to you is that you see something pretty amazing. And if you're really looking for a way to control pain without medication, or you're looking for a way to improve your ability to function, H wave, no matter what product you buy, comes with a 30-day window. And if you don't see pretty amazing results in that first month, we give all of your money back to you. And so it's not something you find very often in medicine. You don't go to an orthopedic surgeon and they do a shoulder surgery and you're like, well, that didn't really work out the way that I wanted it to. Can I get my money back?
Yeah, right.
It doesn't really work that way in medicine.
No, no.
But it's something that we really, no matter who gets H wave, that's our promise. And it really is just about being focused on providing really great outcomes for people.
Now, is there anything on the horizon that you're working towards, or anything that you have in the cauldron that you're working with at H-Wave, or is it just still working with what you have right now and just making sure that it's the best for the clients?
Yeah. So what I'd share with you is, we kind of live by a mantra: if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Right? We've
I
got something
like that.
that really works. And so, the work that we do isn't about, bringing more products to market, because we've got a really great product. We do one thing and we do it really well. Where we focus on, though, is research. So we've done a ton of research about how it works on specific body parts. And so we're kind of broadening the application of the device through the research. We've actually got right now, there's a clinical trial that is underway, about the postoperative management of rotator cuff reconstruction, which is here in the shoulder,
Sure.
patients to recover faster and not use as much pain drugs after surgery. Right. So we're doing a lot of work in research, really looking again just at outcomes, so that we can continue to help more and more people.
Matt Rose, healthcare executive, clinical advocate, and performance leader with H-Wave. Thank you so much for joining us today and bringing this great information to the spinal cord injured community. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, getting to know you, and learning more about your amazing business.
Thanks, John. It was a pleasure.
This podcast series provided by NASCIC is about continuing that same mission of collaboration, education, and progress within the spinal cord injured community. By bringing together voices from research, care, advocacy, and innovation, we hope to highlight the people and organizations working to improve the quality of life of those of us living with SCI. Thank you for joining us for this first episode and for being a part of a community united in moving research, care, and recovery forward. If you would like more information or more resources, please visit nascic.org or contact us at info@nascicconsortium.org. I'm John McAleavey, and I thank you for your time.